Hey, listen, I just wanted to thank those of you who are listening and to tell you I'd really like to hear from you about what you'd like to hear. I was questioned this week by a new business partner who just joined my team and watched my first video on faith that I did last week about salvation. It's who you know. And they were questioning me, and they were just really concerned and confused because I connected with them through business, and I was doing videos about business and teaching them, and they were like, this is like different. And they just said to me, I was taught that when you're a business person, you never mix politics or religion with your business. And I said, I totally understand that. I said, but here's the problem. I am not a religious person, but I am a very faithful person. Faith is important to me. So that's why I have to speak about faith, because it is the underpinning of my life. So then I was concerned. I was wondering, and I was praying. I was asking myself, am I talking when I shouldn't? Should I just stay quiet? And then yesterday I got another Facebook message, this time from someone who had watched the video. And it really touched me because this person had just in the last few days lost a family member, and they reached out to me through their grief to say that some little tiny thing I had said had really given them some thoughts and really made them think about what was going on. And they encouraged me to keep going. So I'm going to take that as encouragement. But today's topic I put in the chat room or in the description. If your church disappeared tomorrow, would your community even notice? Because I was blessed enough to attend worship this morning. I haven't been in worship a lot lately for various reasons, but today Jeff and I went to Fellowship Church in Batesville, which is where we used to attend on a regular basis before we moved away. And Pastor Brent Swanson gave a message that I just really resonated with me. And so I wanted to share that with you. And I'll put the link underneath because they do record their sermons. And if you want to hear the professional version, I'll give you the link so you can hear Pastor Brent. He's also a friend of ours. Brent is an amazing guy. So his sermon today was on Matthew 5, 13 through 15, which is after the Sermon on the Mount. But it's talking about Christians being salt and light and the city on the hill. And the questions he asked were so thought-provoking. I thought I really, really want to talk about this to people because I guess I've always thought of the church as an extended family. So I always wondered how people who did not have a church family handled moving, because when I married Jeff, I was very young, and so we moved around a lot. But wherever we landed, we had the church. And so I always felt like I had kind of an extended family. I didn't have my mom and my dad and my cousins and my aunts and uncles, but I had this extended family that kind of took that place. And I always thought it'd be so much harder to move without having that extended family. So that's how I thought of it, as the church, as a family ministering to the people in the church, which is biblical. But today was also talking about the church ministering to the community, and not just as in, look at us, we're an example, aren't we great? No, it was about reaching out and being a cause of difference in your community, actively helping the poor and the needy and the downtrodden in your community, so that if for some reason, and I'm not talking rapture, but the church just disappeared one day, just everybody in the church just moved away and the church stopped happening, would your city or your town or your community even notice you were gone? And that really, I thought that was so powerful. And evidently that statement, or at least it was quoted today by a gentleman named Eric Swanson, who was one of the founders of the Fellowship Church. So I thought that was really neat. And he went on to make some other topics and questions I want to give you as thought questions, because this was very eye-opening for me. I do think the church should be so involved in the community that with serving with the homeless and feeding the hungry and helping the poor and being an open place where people can get help and counseling and be enveloped in a family if they don't have one, or if theirs is not functioning right and they need that. The church should be thought of in your community as a place to go where those people care, okay? It shouldn't be where you have to go and you have to have the right clothes and you have to be all made up, and you can't, whatever. That's not it. It's supposed to be a place where the people in the community know if I need help, I can go to them. And I'm not talking just financial. That's part of it, obviously. And as a church secretary, I can tell you that a lot of people come to the church for financial help. And that's a whole nother topic. That's part of it. But this topic is bigger, okay? And part of the sermon today was about being an example, not as in, look how righteous I am, example, but example as in, those people are different. Okay, those people are different. And one of the lessons, not lessons, but one of the stories he told was about a teacher, I guess it was a college teacher, who gave an assignment to her literature class to read the Sermon on the Mount and write an article about it. And it was, what did you think of it? What, it was a literature class. So it was talking, this was their section on biblical historical literature, and they were watching this. And so she said it was really interesting because this was the first class she'd given an assignment to who were like part of the post-Christian generation. Because, generally speaking, when in the early days of our country, and especially all the way through the 1950s, if you ask people about the Sermon on the Mount, they'd be like, oh yeah, they kind of knew what you're talking about. And then, oh yes, we agree with that. And people of all faiths would usually say, oh yes, we totally agree with that. We espouse that. We think that's wonderful. But this group of children, college age children, and I'm sorry, but I'm old, so you're children if you're college age, they used words like, I didn't like it. I thought it was really extreme. Nobody could do that. That was stupid and totally impossible for humans. Isn't that interesting? So if you're not familiar with the Sermon on the Mount, what were they talking about here? Let me just read you. This is where the Sermon on the Mount was like 3 chapters long. It's a very long sermon, but it's a sermon by Jesus, and it was given on a mountain, thereby the fancy, appropriate term, Sermon on the Mount. A section of that he was talking about is referred to as the Beatitudes. We just kind of named them that. It wasn't, I don't think it was named there in the original scripture. Those scholars, feel free to correct me because I don't know that stuff. I don't care. But the Beatitudes were these kinds of things. And as I read them, you'll remember, blessed are the poor in spirit, for theirs is the kingdom of God. Blessed are those who mourn, for they shall be comforted. Blessed are the meek. Blessed are the peacemakers. So these are the kind of things that were in the Sermon on the Mount that these college kids thought, that's extreme, that's stupid, nobody can do all that. And so that's what he was talking about today. Be poor in spirit, which means always be looking for what's out there. We mourn with those who mourn. We are the meek people. We are the people who hunger and thirst after righteousness. We try so hard to be like Jesus. We are the merciful people. We are the pure in heart people. We are the peacemaking people, even in politics. Yeah, think about that one. We are the persecuted people, but we're not complaining. We consider that joy to be persecuted for Christ. We are those who are reviled and looked down on, and we're okay with that. It's not a problem. So if you really live like that, as people say, that is really weird, okay? That is extreme. That is stupid in the terms of the world. That is not human. So if the church really lived like that and helped people the way that describes, would that mean that the community that you're in would notice that you were there among them, that you were different, that you were kind of weird, but that if I needed somebody to help, I know I could go there? Think about it. Here's some of the other questions. These are from Brent that I thought were really good. What does it mean that the church exists for the good of those who are not yet members? Do you agree with that? Think about it. Thought-provoking, right? What does it mean that Christians are to be a counterculture? Which means against the culture. How does becoming a countercultural make us a salt and light in the world? Just thought-provoking, okay? I'm not here to lecture you. I'm not a preacher. I'm not here to lecture. I'm just here to make you think, because these things made me think this morning. Would you say that you are engaged in the lives of the non-Christians in your neighborhood, your workplace, or your family? So the non-Christians in your sphere of influence, more or less, because everybody has a sphere of influence, whether you think you're influential or not, there are people watching. But the non-Christians in that sphere, do they think you're weird? Do they think you're different? Do they think that if they needed somebody, really needed someone to listen, that you would be there? Okay? Are you engaged with these people? All right. Why is it important for Christians to stay engaged in the lives of non-Christians? And is this hard for you? And this was a really good point he pointed. He said, a lot of us are so focused inward that we're trying so hard to do all the right things and we're focused inward, and we have to have an inward life and we have to continually strive, but we're not looking at the world, which is why we're here. And then others of us are so focused outward and so engaged in our communities and our world that we don't have time for God. So again, we come to what I've always said was one of Jesus' major tenets was balance. Focus inward and focus outward. So again, one more thought-provoking question. What does it mean for the church to be for the community? Would you say our church, this is how he preached it, and since I'm telling you, I say your church, do you think your church is that way? And what could you, or us, what could we, as he put it, do differently? I love fellowship, and I think they do a pretty good job of reaching out the community. We have a Mother's Day Out program that's for anybody. We have a family, a women's fitness class that's an outreach, and my husband's elbowing me in the shoulder to want me to go to that. But it's turned into an outreach for our church to provide free and very low cost classes, fitness classes. We do a lot of community events. Our church building is actually an old theater in downtown Batesville that they rehabbed. And so then across the street is this little pocket park. So we have one of those main streets that everybody's like this Main Street USA, and has all the little walking areas. So we do a lot of community events out in the street. We block off the street and have balloon things and all that. So I think this church really is trying to do that, and that's why I really appreciate the sermon series from the preaching pastor. And I hope that it gave you some things to think about, not just for your church, although that's kind of what it's talking about, but also for you. Are you salt and light and a city set on the hill in your family, in your neighborhood? Do you even know your neighbors? In your congregation? And do they think you're a little weird, a little different? But they also know that if they needed something, really needed something, they could go to you. Just things to think about. Let me know what you think. I really want to know. I really do. This is supposed to be a conversation. So if you're on YouTube, subscribe. If you're on Facebook, follow me. Do me a favor and share this video if you think somebody else would enjoy it. And leave me a comment, because as I said, this is supposed to be a conversation, because I need help. Okay. Love you. Bye.